Preservation Evokers call upon the powers of the Emerald Dream and the Green Dragonflight to heal their allies and prevent harm. So, this video is going to tell you everything you need to know for the War Within Season 1, and it is going to be very beginner-friendly if you're new to WoW, the class, or the spec, while also giving you everything you need to know if you are a veteran. We're going to start off jumping straight into our stats and our stat priority. So your main or primary stat is going to be intellect. The more of this you have, the more healing your spells will do, which is of course our main objective. The way to do this, just get a higher and higher and higher eye level of gear. Now, there is of course a stat priority for your secondary stats that you should loosely follow, which is this here. Now, I would only really look at comparing these if you're looking at two pieces of gear that are the same eye level. Otherwise, just get a higher and higher eye level. Mastery is unique to every specialization in the game. Ours is called Lifebinder. Healing done to allies is increased by a percentage, while their own health is lower than ours. So basically, if our allies have lower health than us, percentage-wise, we will do more healing to them, and that is our mastery. Critical Strike is, of course, a chance to do more healing or damage. Versatility, which is the same for every spec, it increases damage and healing done, while also simultaneously reducing how much damage we take, and is a very good all-round stat. Haste actually increases your attack speed and casting speed, and how fast your heals will heal. Let's say we have our deep breath here. You can see, not deep breath, not deep breath at all. Our fire breath, for example, you can see it's taking a while to empower. The more haste we have, the quicker this is actually going to happen. And then we can see it's doing damage over time on our enemy. Well, basically, the more haste you have, the quicker this will be dealing damage or healing for. While we're here, let's take a quick look at our set bonus from the gear we're getting in Season 1 of the War Within. I do want to say, if you are a beginner or new to WoW, etc., and you don't know what the spells are that I'm about to say, don't worry. I will be fully explaining this in the rotation part of the video. So the 2 set is Reversion's healing is increased by 10%, and it's got a 50% chance to grant an additional stack of temporal compression. And the 4 set, Temporal Compression, increases the healing of your next Empower spell by 10% per stack. Pretty standard, and actually a lot of the set bonuses for a lot of classes, with hero talents now being added in, are quite simple and straightforward in Season 1. They're really not going too crazy on these this season. So now we're going to be looking at some of the utilities and cooldowns and defensives that we have available to us as an Evoker in the War Within. So on the left here, this action bar, these are abilities that we're using to debilitate our enemies. And on the right, these ones are actually there to enhance us and our allies. So let's start off with what we're doing to our enemies then. Well, first up, we've got Sleepwalk. You can see here I'm casting this, disorienting an enemy for 20 seconds, causing them to sleepwalk around you. And damage has a chance, so it's not a guarantee, to also awake them. Then we have Landslide. You can see I can point this wherever I want, making a landslide, conjuring a path of shifting stone towards the target location. Rooting enemies for 15 seconds that are caught with it, but damage again may cancel the root. Then we have Oppressing Roar. Any enemies caught in the cone that is emitted from this Oppressing Roar will actually have the duration of any crowd control placed upon them increased by 50%. So if you root them for 10 seconds and then use that, they're then going to be rooted for another 5 seconds, therefore 15 seconds, for example. And it will be for any crowd control applied to them in the next 10 seconds when you use Oppressing Roar. And lastly, we have Quell. This is your interrupt, otherwise known as a kick. And this is what we use to interrupt our enemies' spellcasting. It is extremely important to use this, and beginners and veterans alike often do overlook the importance of interrupting the enemy's spellcasting, whether that be in raiding, PvP, or Mythic Plus. Moving over then to the defensives and utilities we have to help us and our allies, we have Obsidian Scales. And you can see here I've got 2 charges of this at the moment. Reinforce your scales, reducing damage taken by 30% for 12 seconds. That's just a core defensive that we have. We then have Blessing of the Bronze. You should put this on before combat. It can be placed on you, your party, and your raid. And by that, I do mean that if you place it on yourself or just press the button, when you're in a party or a raid, it will also apply to everybody in that group. And what this does is it reduces the cooldown of any major movement abilities that your allies and you have by 15% for an entire hour. We then have another huge one, Fury of the Aspects. This is your bloodlust or heroism. Basically, this is going to increase the haste of all party and raid members by 30% for 40 seconds and is generally considered the biggest cooldown in the game. Other classes also have it, and you can see I now have the exhaustion debuff. Now, if a mage uses their version or a shaman uses their version, it does then mean that everyone has the debuff and you can't then use yours. It is shared between the entire raid group. We have Rescue, which I kind of can show you, but not really. You swoop to an ally and fly with them to a target location. So I can say this is where I want to fly to, and I click my ally or their raid frame, and I will rescue them to that location, taking them out of wherever, whatever they're in. And lastly, we have Cauterizing Flame. This is one of the best debuff removers in the game. You're going to cauterize an ally's wounds, removing any bleed, poison, curse, and disease effects, and healing them if it removes any effect. A lot of classes can remove like magic and disease, etc., but only very few can actually remove bleed effects, and this is why the Evoker is so amazing with their Cauterizing Flame. Now, you can choose other talents in your Evoker tree, and there are other bits and bobs in the Evoker spellbook, like Expunge, and there's a few others that you can look through. But I don't want to overwhelm you in this video, and these are the main ones that I think you really need to be aware of if you weren't already. And now finally for the really fun part, which is of course the actual rotation and healing priority we're going to be following for the War Within. It's not too difficult. We are going to be starting off with the raid build and then moving on to the Mythic Plus build, and we are going to be using Chronowarden hero talents for both of these. The main way we're actually going to be playing this is with something called Echo. Wrap an ally with temporal energy, healing them and causing your next non-Echo healing spell to cast an additional time on that ally for 105% of normal healing. And the way we're actually going to be playing this build is basically where we're going to be ramping up our echoes across the raid to do a lot of healing when the massive damage comes in. So we are having to ramp up for a few seconds before the big damage actually comes in a raid. The first thing we're going to do on our priority list, on our ramp up then, is going to be Dream Breath. It's on a 30-second cooldown, and it's something called an Empower spell that we have as Evokers. You can see on the tooltip, it says, number 1, heals X amount instantly and another amount over 16 seconds. Number 2, heals more instantly, but less over 12 seconds, etc., etc. So we can use it here. You can see Dream Breath, and we're healing in this huge cone here. And then, out it pops. And then we have another one, Spirit Bloom. Divert spiritual energy, healing an ally for X amount. Spirit splits to injured allies within 30 yards when empowered. And you can see at 1, 2, 3, and 4, it's going to heal more allies. So if the raid has just taken damage or is going to be taking a lot of damage soon and you don't have loads of echoes already out, we can use Dream Breath and Spirit Bloom to get quite a lot of healing out on multiple people. Then, if we actually want to look at how we're going to ramp up with our echoes, the first spell I'm actually going to use is Temporal Anomaly. Send forward a vortex of temporal energy, absorbing damage on you and allies in its path. Absorption is reduced beyond 5 targets. And then we're going to get out as many echoes as we possibly can. You can see here, it's actually going to cost 2 essence to do this. And this is our essence here, just below my unit frame, used by Evokers to power certain abilities. 1 essence recharges at a time. Now, we do have something called Essence Burst, which you can see here. Living Flame has a chance, and Reversion has a chance to make your next essence ability free, and that will stack 2 times. And of course, Echo is one of our essence abilities, meaning we can get some extra echoes out with Essence Burst. So if you're wondering how long to ramp up for, about 10 to 15 seconds before the big damage comes in, I would use my Temporal Anomaly, and then I would start trying to get my echoes out across the raid. Once the damage comes in, I would then use either Verdant Embrace or again use my Spirit Bloom to do a lot of healing. Verdant Embrace is really cool. We can fly to an ally. Obviously, I am me, so I'm not going to actually fly there. Fly to an ally and heal them for a large amount, or heal yourself for the same amount. And of course, Spirit Bloom, we've already spoken about. So we can get these two out pretty much if there's like large amounts of damage happening and we haven't ramped up. We can then ramp up with our echoes. And then once the damage comes in, we can use Verdant Embrace or Spirit Bloom. Spirit Bloom is going to be very, very useful, and it's the one that I use most of the time. After that, I'm going to be using my Fire Breath, and I'm going to be using this at max rank as well. You can see this is another Empower spell that we have in our arsenal, and also does grant here Essence Burst. You can see here, Leaping Flames. Your next living flame will strike 4 additional targets. And hilariously, I forgot to put it on there. So it's not actually called Living Flame anymore because of the hero talents we're taking. It is now called Chrono Flames. Twist Chrono Flames towards a target, healing them and dealing fire damage to enemies. Bronze Magic repeats 15% of the damage or healing you dealt to the target in the last 5 seconds as Arcane, up to 188,000. So basically, what Fire Breath does, if we use it here and we rank it right up, you can see again, we're going to get that Leaping Flames buff, and that is from this talent over here. Fire Breath causes your next living flame to strike 1 additional target per Empower level. So we've got 4 stacks of that, meaning when I use Chrono Flames, it's actually going to hit an additional 4 targets rather than 1 after using our Fire Breath. And this is a really great way as kind of like getting a filler out, because Chrono Flames will be your sort of little filler heal anyway. And it works even better when you do use Fire Breath with it to heal multiple people, especially in a raiding environment. Chrono Flames are also a fantastic way of getting your Essence Burst stacks so that you can get 2 free echoes out before you even start using your Essence. As remember, it does cost 2 Essence each time you use it. Ideally, between ramping up with your Echo as well, you would keep Fire Breath and Dream Breath pretty much on cooldown as well to really utilize the large amounts of healing you can get out of using these spells together. There is a really interesting talent, if I can see it. Yes, Call of Ysera. Verdant Embrace increases the healing of your next Dream Breath by 40% or your next Living Flame by 100%. Generally, I would use this on Dream Breath. It's just a much more healing you're going to get out of that. So when you use your Verdant Embrace, let's say I use it on myself, you can see I've got the Call of Ysera buff here, where my next Dream Breath is now going to do a lot more healing. So if you are thinking Verdant Embrace is cool and all, but it's only going to heal 1 ally, well, actually, with the buff it adds onto your Dream Breath, it is actually worth more than it would first look like on the offset. We do have quite a few cooldowns that we can use as well. We've got Rewind on a 3-minute cooldown, rewinding 33% of damage taken in the last 5 seconds by all allies within 40 yards. Always heals for at least X amount. Healing is increased by 100% when you're not in a raid. We've got Time Dilation, stretch time around an ally for the next 10 seconds, causing half of their damage to then actually be slowed and taken over 10 seconds instead. Reversion is on an 8-second cooldown. This is actually a really good spell. Reverse an ally's injuries, instantly healing them for some of the damage taken in the last 5 seconds, and an additional amount over 15 seconds. When it critically heals, its duration is extended up to a maximum of 12 seconds. And lastly, we've got Stasis, causing your next 3 helpful spells to be duplicated and stored in a time lock. And you can reactivate that Stasis to then unleash that healing. And that is pretty much the basics of how you're going to heal in a raid environment. If we move into the Mythic Plus build here, you can see not much is really changing. Now, it does play a little bit differently in Mythic Plus, because obviously there's not tons of people. There's only 5 of you in total. The first thing I would do is cast Temporal Anomaly, sending forward a vortex, absorbing damage on any allies, and then cast Reversion, reversing their injuries and instantly healing them for the amount done, etc. And don't forget, you do have 2 charges of this at the moment. This is actually going to help proc something here called Life Spark. Reversion healing has a chance to cause your next living flame to cast instantly and deal increased healing or damage, and that can stack up to twice, which is, ta-da, here you go. It's actually procced at perfect timing right here on our Chrono Flames. Imagine then pairing that with Fire Breath to get more targets healed with your Chrono Flames, and you start to see how these 4 spells work really well together. I would use a rank 1 or 2 Dream Breath if your allies are kind of moderately injured. You don't want to take up too much time here in Mythic Plus. Things are a bit more fast-paced, aren't they? And then in the same as you would in a raid as well, you can use Verdant Embrace with Call of Ysera to improve your Dream Breath as well. So you can use Verdant Embrace, healing someone, and then using your Dream Breath to get that empowered version of it, just in a smaller kind of environment, if you will. If your party does take a huge, big whammy, however, then I would use your Spirit Bloom. And don't forget, this heals up to 5 people with the full rank. So if you want to do AoE healing, you can. You can use this up to Empower 4, depending on how many people are actually injured, of course, in the Mythic Plus party. And then if you do just need to use a single target heal where you're not looking to do it for Dream Breath, you can use Verdant Embrace for this as well. So don't feel like you just have to use it here for Dream Breath with the Call of Ysera Tarrant. You can just use it if you just need to do some single spot healing as well. If anyone's taking a little bit of damage, you can use Reversion here as well. You don't just have to be using it in this kind of sequence here for empowering, getting procs on your Chrono Flames and using a Dream Breath, etc. And then if you are in a bit of an situation, Rewind is actually really fantastic. Rewinding damage taken in the last 5 seconds by all of your allies. So if they take huge amounts of damage, you can just rewind it with this. However, it is on a large cooldown. So it's pretty straightforward, I would say, for the Mythic Plus build here. A bit easier to understand, in my opinion, than the Raid one. But now let's look at how it all comes together with those exciting new hero talents. So for this build, we're going to be going for the Chronowarden hero talents. These are new, so let's go through them in a little bit more detail than we would the usual talents. Chronowardens can manipulate time, giving them glimpses of the future to speed their actions or recalling echoes to revisit past actions. They specialize in bronze magic. So let's have a look then. We start off with Chrono Flame. Living Flame is enhanced with bronze magic, repeating some of the damage or healing you deal to the targets in the last 5 seconds as arcane. Then, going down the left, we have Warp. Hover now causes you to briefly warp out of existence and appear at your destination, and the cooldown is also reduced, so kind of making Hover a bit quicker, I guess. Hover continues to allow Evoker spells to be cast while moving. First choice node, Temporality and Motes of Acceleration. Warp then reduces damage taken, starting high and reducing. That's actually quite nice. Motes of Acceleration. Warp leaves a trail of motes of acceleration, and any allies who come into contact with a mote gain 20% movement speed. This is really fantastic. Let's say that a group of you in a raid boss, for example, all have to move from the center of the room to the left. You can use this and then give some extra momentum to your allies passively, maybe to some classes that don't have as good movement, etc. I think this is absolutely fantastic, especially for a spec like Augmentation or Preservation, but still, especially for Augmentation, where they are meant to be a support class anyway. Second choice node, Time Convergence. Oh, so on here, by the way, I would go for Motes of Acceleration, depending on what is needed in the fight, if there's a lot of movement, etc., or just damage taken needed to be reduced by you. Double Time, when Dream Breath or Fire Breath critically strike, their duration is extended, which is really nice. Or Time Convergence, non-defensive abilities of a 45-second cooldown grant or less, grant 5% intellect. This is massive, and I would go for Time Convergence always on this one. Temporal Burst, tip the scales, overloads you with temporal energy, increasing your haste, movement speed, and cooldown recovery, which is really nice. Threads of Fate, casting an Empower spell during Temporal Burst, causes a nearby ally to gain a Thread of Fate, granting them a chance to echo their damage or healing, dealing a percentage of the amount again. Again, really nice, really good for Augmentation, great for Preservation, of course, but it does feel very like it is leaning towards Augment for this one. Master of Destiny, casting Essence spells, extends your active Threads of Fate, which is nice. And then each time you cast an Empower spell, Unstable Time Magic reduces its cooldown. On the right side, we've got Spirit Bloom heals for an additional amount, woohoo. For each healing over time effect from Spirit Bloom, gained from haste, that's really nice. And casting Echo has a 20% chance to cause your next Echo to be more effective. Again, just some passive increases to our spells there. We're not really going to notice them. We're going to be, not doing anything different with those abilities. It's just going to be enhancing the rotation that we're already doing. Then, lastly, After Image, empower spells, send up to 3 Chrono Flames to your targets, which is just, again, really nice and a passive thing that's going to be. Finally, looking at the consumables and enchants, a few things have changed in the War Within. From the Great Vault each week, you're going to be getting a Nerubian Gem Weaver. Well, you might not necessarily, but this is the socket you can add from the Great Vault to your gear. And we can do this on our helm, wrist, and belt. Then you can also now add 2 sockets to your neck and each individual ring. We can put magnificent jeweler settings on them. So again, the neck and each ring you can put these on. The cloak, we're going to go for Leeching Fangs, adding some leech. Council's Intellect is going to be Intellect on the chest, Leech on the wrist. Daybreak Spell Thread is going to add Intellect and Stamina on your legs. Scout's March is movement speed on your boots, get around a bit more mobility. Mastery is really good for us Preservation Evokers in the War Within, so we're going for Mastery on the rings. Of course, if you are simulating your character and you need a bit more of a different stat, etc., then of course do go for that. And the Authority of Fiery Resolve is going to be what we're going for. Oh, there's my editing software. On your weapon. Sorry about that. But what does the Fiery Resolve actually do? Well, when you are healing your allies, it has a chance of, if I read out the tooltip, radiating a wave of soothing fire, that heals yourself and 4 closest allies for a large amount. And that is what the weapon enchant does. Looking at the actual consumables we're going to be using then, we're going for the Flask of Tempered Mastery on our flask. So you can go for the versatility one if you'd like something a bit more all-rounded to help with a bit of survivability and healing, but up to you. Feast is going to give you primary stat. Algari Mana Potion is the Mana Potion we'll be using. And the Potion Bomb of Recovery is an interesting one. This is actually a bomb you can throw onto your allies and it'll increase how much healing they take. Healing Potion, Mana Oil as well, you can put on your weapon now. We can actually add weapon oils again to our weapons, adding critical strike and haste. Augment Rune is called the Crystallized Augment Rune this season. And then the sockets is actually a bit interesting. A Culminating Blasphemite. It adds some primary stats, so intellect, but also the secondary effect on there is that for each different coloured blue gem you have, it will add 0.15% critical effect, meaning if you use an onyx, a ruby, an emerald, and a sapphire, you get the full 0.60% increased effect on your gear. After that, I would just use deadly onyxes for any other sockets you have. If you're a beginner, if you're a veteran, you probably already know about simming, etc. And then I would recommend to actually on there, instead, well, just do whatever gem is best for your stat priority. Thank you so much for watching this guide. I hope it was really useful for you in the War Within Season 1, whether it was for Mythic Plus or raiding. If you do have any questions, I'll be happy to help. My Patreon is in the description below, and that is where you can find my LVUI profiles, which I'll show you in a second. And also, I'm putting together a huge macro list for every single spec that's going to be really useful for you in the War Within as well. I am doing all classes and specs for the War Within, so if you are new to the channel, then please do click this playlist here to check out what else I have, which is all of them. There will also be PvP guides on this channel as well for War Within Season 1, so make sure to look out for that. This here is the UI that I was referring to. As you can see, we've got target frames, etc., left and right, and raid frames go in the middle here, and then weak auras in the middle with an action bar down here. Chat is behind where my camera is. Minimap and details, etc., are here on the right. All of the plater profiles, the voodoo, the LVY, etc., details profile has all been made by me. And again, you can get this on my Patreon should you like it.